Welcome back to Jake's Amp Garage. And if you notice, I'm dressed a little bit differently to that previous video. For those of you who haven't seen the previous video, it was supposed to be recorded straight away. This one was supposed to be recorded straight away after that one, which it actually was. And I said in that video I was going to test the tone stack, and I'll show you I was going to do that. But I thought, you know what, I'll do something a little more comprehensive. So we're 2 or 3 days later, and we're going to do something that I haven't done yet on this YouTube channel, and it's something that I do anyway, and I've been doing this for 20 years. I do a comprehensive set of tests for any amplifier or any piece of equipment that comes through here. That gets put into a spreadsheet, I print that out, and it goes together with the amp or whatever the piece of equipment is to the owner, so they can use it as a reference. Or any tech that they take their equipment to can use it as a reference. I also make a note of any repairs that were made. And like I said, for those of you who don't know, I haven't seen the previous videos, the repair for this amp was this Presence Pt.4. Now, this amp is a Marshall Silver Jubilee 100 watt head. I've got the matching 4x12 cab inside. It did come out of a recording studio. I think it was in there since brand new. The current owner wanted me to go through this and make a repair to that pot. So I thought, you know what, while it's up here on the bench, I'll do a set of comprehensive tests. Not comprehensive, but enough that it'll make it a little more interesting than just doing a tone stack test. I won't do the preamp valves, even though it's something that I do. I'll just do the power valves. Otherwise the video will blow out. Trying to keep these videos to about 15 or so minutes. So this guy's already warmed up. We have a B plus or an HT of 495. That's before the valves are conducting. I'll just show you guys something before we move on. This is, no matter how many times I've done this, I always check the valve data and the pinouts. Now, these are EL34s and 12AX7s or ECC83s. I don't know how many of those I've seen, but I always check the pinouts on these things using this. This is so old. I think this is from the 1950s. This, somebody wants to tell me, I think it's 25 pence or P or something. This is, well, when Australia used the British currency. We don't use it anymore. Haven't in, what, 60 years or so. We've got around $1, which, just like every other dollar, is worth shit now. Purchasing power's gone down the toilet thanks to our moron politicians. But anyway, that's something that I use all the time. And I've got another exact copy of this, plus some other reference manuals that I use constantly. So, while we got this one's already warmed up. Like I said, 495 volts on the HT. This will drop when I flip the standby switch. But before we do that, I'm going to check the control grid voltage, because this is a fixed bias amp. The control grid voltage will be on, should be on, straight away. So let's just check that. I should stand up so I can see what I'm doing. It should be about 40 or so. Minus 40, yeah. Minus 42, that's fine. So I'm going to check. Am I touching that one? We are now. There we go. Bingo. And bingo. Cool. Exactly what we need. So let's flip the switch, as they say. Drops the HT down to 464, which is what we're going to get on our plates. 465, that's what I would expect. And I think I mentioned this before, maybe I haven't. This amplifier has been an absolute joy to work on, super easy to work on, very well made. PCB is very high quality. Everything's done well. There's a couple of negatives which I'm not a big fan of, but that's more like nitpicking. The wiring here, I mean, it's cloth covered wiring, which, you know, I'd prefer they could have used better, more high quality wiring, but it's all black. So not a lot of wiring in here to begin with. It does look nice, I'll give them that. But they could have used color coded wiring, like makes it a little bit easier to trace. And these capacitors could have been a better quality because it is a Silver Jubilee. But anyway, that's me just nitpicking. So we'll give this a little bit of time. Well, it's still at 465, 466. So that's going to be our plate voltage, but we will check individually. Now that 465 I'm measuring here at the supply, after the rectifier, at the main filter caps. So let's check, and I've got this written down here. So we're going to check our grid voltage first, and then I have a sheet over here where I'm going to write everything down. Get this out of the way. Stand up. Okay. Now what we would expect is minus voltage here, because the grid has to be minus with respect to the cathode. Minus 40.4 on that one. That's our B1. minus 40.4 volts. And on this one, get it to touch, minus 40.4. These valves are super well matched. Once I've done everything on top of this board, I'm going to flip it over, and then we'll check the bias on this side, which is essentially what we're doing over here, but we're checking individually. Over here it's per pair. So let's check here. Minus 41.2. That one. Okay, and then I'm going to check this one over here. Minus 41.3. Let's double just check to make sure this one, it may have moved a little bit. Well, you know you don't want to move. 41.2. Okay. So now we're going to check the plate to cathode voltage, which should be around about 464 for each one. No matter how many times these things get straightened out, they always twist around each other. Always. Okay, so our anode is pin 3 and our cathode is pin 8, which is easy enough to do. That's 5. Okay. So we're going to have to switch that over to a higher one. 3. So let's check our cathode to 462 on that one. .462 on that one. You can hear the speaker squealing as you're touching the pins here. .61 on that one. .61 on that one. So that's pretty damn good. So I'm going to say about 461 on each of those. Okay, so next what we're going to do is check the, I'm off camera, we're going to check the screen grid voltages as well in the exact same way. Okay, just let me jot this down. I should have done this earlier, but anyway. And the screen grid is, where are we? Pin 4. There we go, look at that, it's already twisted around itself. So again, I'm going to start from this side because that's what I've been doing. Make sure that's right. And 458. 460. Let's double check that it hasn't moved. 459. 459. 459. And 459. Can I complain about that? Okay. There we go. That was pretty simple. Now, for those of you wondering, these are the screen grid resistors here. These are big white ones. They're the ceramic or cement ones, I think they're called, whatever you call them. But they're, what do they get, 1K 5 watts? You can easily tell because of the size. Okay, so now that we've done that, what I will do now is I'm going to test the tone stack. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. So, I'm going to plug our function generator in. Now, just if you don't know, this is the input jack here. It has shorting contacts, so when there's nothing plugged in, it shorts it down to ground. Okay, so you don't get any noise. Otherwise, if it's left floating, you get a lot of noise coming through this thing. Don't want that. So let's get this out of here. We're done with that. And like I said, I go through this and check the preamp valves in exactly the same way. But I'm not going to do that here. I will do that for the owner on camera, but I don't want to do it for the YouTube video, otherwise it ends up blowing up the length of video. So plug this in. Okay, and remember, you need to have that speaker plugged in. This guy needs to be plugged in all the time. I'm not going to do that for the power output test. I'm going to plug in the dummy load sitting over there when we do the power output. This is a 100 watt amp, so that's what I'm expecting, or close enough to it. And then we'll, I think that'll be it. Anyway, let's do the tone stack, and you should hear that coming through this speaker, hopefully. That's off. We are now, we don't use a sine wave for this, okay? But we can. I just initially, we're at 1 kilohertz, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn these on. Which one's going to make sure I get the arse? I got the right ones. So that's now, my function generator's on full, but I got to turn these guys up. You can hear that. Hope you guys can hear that. I'm not going to turn it on full because I'll end up destroying that speaker. It's only 10 watts. This thing puts out 100 watts. Okay. Okay, so when that's all working. But what we will do now is the tone stack. But in order to do that, I don't use a sine wave. You can't use a sine wave because you don't have enough harmonics in it. So we use a triangular wave. So we'll switch that to triangular at 1 kilohertz. Let's put it up to 3. Let's put it up to 2 kilohertz. We'll do the treble first. So we'll turn this on. You can barely hear it now. So which this? I don't know if you guys can hear that maybe. Let me try this one. Now you can hear it. Nope. Everything's upside down. You can definitely hear the change in the pitch. Okay, that's at 1 kilohertz. So if we do it at 2 kilohertz, definitely hear that. Even at 3 kilohertz. Now it's starting to pierce my ear a bit. Okay, now we're going to test the mid, but we have to drop the frequency a little bit. So let's drop that down to, that's about 800 hertz or so. Now we'll do the mids. You can hear that. Right? You can definitely hear that. Okay. And then we'll do the bass. We'll do that at 100 hertz or so. You can hear it. Well, you guys can't hear it, but I can feel it coming through the table. Oh, you can definitely hear that you can feel it through the table, the vibration. Okay, so that's all good. And what did we forget? Of course, we forgot to do the presence control. Let's turn that up a bit. 2 kilohertz. You can definitely tell that. Let's do it up to 3 kilohertz. It's working nice and smooth. It's definitely doing its job. We'll turn that off. So that's tone stack and the presence control. Okay, so we'll turn that off. Turn all this off. And just on the presence control, while we're at it, this presence control, while it works fine, there was a different setup back in the day that Marshall used to use, which in my opinion worked better. However, that presence control back in the day had DC on the presence control. Now, for those of you who don't know, when you have DC on any kind of pot and you turn it, you'll hear that scratchiness, that noise comes through. That presence control was a lot less subtle than this one, but like I said, it did have DC on it, so that made it noisy in that way. Now, if you don't use your presence control that often, or if you're not in a situation where you need to not have that come through, that noise, then that presence control, in my opinion, works better. This one is much quieter though, So if you're in a situation where you're constantly having to change it and you don't want to have that that scratchiness come through, then this is a better option. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Excuse me. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to switch this guy off. I'm going to flip it over. So we'll cut the video while I'm doing that. We're already running for about, what's it, 15 minutes or so. I think I have to edit some of that out. I'll flip it over. I'll turn it back on again. And I'll show you guys how to do the DC bias, the bias control or the bias check on your Marshall Silver Jubilee, because it has a bias board over here, which you can do from the top side of the amp. All you would have to do is take out the grill, hook up your multimeter to it, any cheap ass multimeter will do, and you can check the bias per pair of output valves. Super easy to do, and there is a bias pot for each pair, so you can increase or decrease it as you need. That way you can match them up really easily. And then we'll do a power output test. But in order to do that power output test, I could do it like this. I want the valves facing up that way. So we're going to be doing a 100 watt test, and I want them to be able to have all the cooling that they can get. So let's switch that off. I will then flip this amplifier over. I'll get it all set up and hooked up with the dummy load over there, and then we'll do a 100 watt test, and the bias test as well, which we can do with the 100 watt dummy load hooked up anyway. So I'll see you guys on the flip side. I'll see you guys on the flip side. See you in a bit.